I'm one of the psychologists here at the University of Washington Medical Center, and I'm one of the co-directors on the Northwest Regional Spinal Cord Injury Model System, which is the grant that funds all of these forums and all of these folks that you see helping out tonight. And so we welcome you to our forum tonight on worst case scenarios. And tonight we have with us Tracy Connelly, and she is one of the Emergency Preparedness Training Specialists for the City of Seattle. That's a mouthful. I can't imagine having to say that every day. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about her job and her position and all of that. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Tracy, and thanks very much.
Hello.
Hi.
How's everyone doing tonight? Great. Good. Well, I have to, I'm not really used to the whole microphone, so you'll forgive me if my volume kind of changes, because I'm just kind of testing it out. But we are recording tonight so that we can actually put this on the website, so folks who aren't able to attend tonight and join us will be able to access the information as well. And I also have to apologize because I am coming off of a conference that has me so excited, again, about preparedness, because that's what I do. So my energy level is kind of up tonight, and if I start speaking too quickly, just kind of, tell me to calm down. So my name is Tracy Connelly, and I work for the City of Seattle's Office of Emergency Management. I've only been there about 6 months, but I like to give folks a little history, kind of how I got involved in emergency preparedness, because I am no different than anybody else, and I did not wake up one day at 7 years old and decide, hey, wouldn't it be fun to talk about disasters for a living? Truth be told, my interests were very different, and I graduated college and was working as an HIV testing counselor, and working for the State of New York Department of Health, and something called September 11th happened while I was doing that, and I was in a state building at the time. And, during disasters, we don't think rationally. So, first we heard on the radio that a plane went through one of the towers, and it was kind of like, it's such a nice day. Who could have missed the tower? And being New Yorkers, on the radio right away, it was like, what idiot just flew through the tower? Really just kind of looking at it like, okay, that's got to be an accident. 8 minutes later, there's another plane. 9 minutes later, there's another plane. Your immediate thought is, we're under attack. Now, my state building wasn't necessarily very close, but it was a state building, and it was the next closest government building to the towers. So immediately, our thought was, oh God, we're next. And, one of the things that I think is often the biggest problem, both before, during, and after a disaster, is communication. We see this time and time again with every disaster. Communication is often the biggest failure. 9/11 was no different. I can tell you my experience of my supervisor walking into the door, stopping and saying, stay where you are, and left. Which to me said, get out. As it did to everybody else in the building. So what happened was, we all flooded the streets. Why? Because we didn't know what the plan was. Nobody told us if there was a building plan, if there was a department plan, if there were appropriate actions we should be taking. So what happens when we flood the streets? Well, we block emergency vehicles from being able to get through. So in a sense, because of our lack of knowledge, we obstructed the response. Whether it was a small impact or a large impact, it was an impact nonetheless. And we disrupted that. So that's the first part. Second part was, after it took me about 10 hours to get home from my typical, half an hour commute, I got home and my father wasn't there. And my sister was still at school, she's a teacher, and, staying with her kids whose parents hadn't come home yet. Trying to keep them calm, meanwhile, her family members hadn't been found. Not knowing where your family members are makes responding to anything or recovering from anything very difficult. Very, very difficult, almost impossible. But luckily, my father was okay. I've learned that in a couple programs. I forgot to mention that. So I just want to make sure I get that out there, that I was very fortunate in that my father was able to return home. So after that, I decided that I really didn't want anybody to have to experience that. Those were things that could have been prevented, or at least my feelings could have been prevented, because I felt helpless. I felt helpless, which is a horrible, horrible feeling. And I was so jealous of all those folks that were on TV handing out water, who had a sign rooting people on. So I decided to quit my job, and I joined AmeriCorps, and then response work, and then I joined the Red Cross, and I was with them for a few years, including Katrina. And during my time at Red Cross, I was really fortunate in the fact that I not only got to do public education like this about disaster preparedness, but I also was able to respond to both local and national disasters. And the number one disaster that happens in this country is single-family fires. Single-family fires are the number one disaster. And the Red Cross locally happens to respond to a single-family fire every 36 hours. That's when they're getting called. You know they happen more than that. So, and again, this program's not going to be terrifying, I promise. It's going to be a lot of the things that we can do. But, you know, so that's pretty frequent that those are happening. And I worked for 3 months on Katrina, where I had 2 days off, both of which I was on call. Every other day was, 6:45 in the morning until 9:30 at night, meeting with folks who evacuated. And, I mean, the diversity, the level of, what folks had to deal with, what they had to overcome was incredible. And to be honest, heartbreaking. So torturous. It was hard to actually start talking about this stuff again because I got a little choked up. But I think what got me through it was that every day, and almost every 45 minutes when I would meet with somebody new, I'd walk into the lobby and you would see folks of all different backgrounds, all different educations, income levels, races, culture, religion, going up to each other saying, "Where are you from? How you doing? Do you know where to get bus passes? Because I know where to get bus passes. Here's my number. Give me a call." Taking care of one another. I mean, in a sense, I was like, God, I am doing nothing. Like, the 4-second conversation they are having with one another is making all the difference. How much stronger would we be if we set some of these relationships up ahead of time? Yeah, because it is. I mean, if you look around this room, you look around your household, your employment area, any volunteer place you might go to, those are the first responders in a disaster. Single family fire, yes, police, fire, EMS, first aid emergencies, those are going to be the folks who are first responders. During a major event, it's us. It's individuals, it's citizens, it's neighborhoods, it's families. And we're so much stronger when we do that together. So that's kind of like my hair club for women moments, and hopefully the most serious part of the program. Because although the information is really important, and I can't stress that enough, I don't want folks to be overwhelmed. Because preparedness is something that can be very small steps that we can all do individually, as a family, as a household, together, that will make us so much stronger. And that has to happen at the top down. It has to happen at the city, it has to happen at the neighborhood level, and by neighborhood I mean like Wallingford, Redmond, Central District, all of those neighborhoods. Then, blocks, households. It really trickles down. It's kind of like this pyramid of preparedness. So hopefully we'll talk about some good steps about, things that we can each do. Now, I don't want to claim to be an expert on spinal cord injuries because I'm not. And I don't even think I'm an expert in preparedness, but I think I have a lot of experience with that, and I'm knowledgeable about that. But I've been very fortunate to be working with folks ahead of time tonight to talk about, spinal cord injuries. I think, again, we're encouraging partnerships, relationship buildings. It is about us communicating. Now, what I would like to do is kind of run through the program. We'll have some time at the end for questions and Q&A, but I cannot stress enough that the city and myself want to be a resource. So don't hesitate to call. Don't hesitate to shoot off an email. If you're running into a problem where you're putting your plan together, call us. Let's brainstorm together. Let's come up with solutions. If you've tried something out and you were like, look, it said this, I did that, that didn't work, but this worked for me. Let us know, because then we can put that into our best practice list. We can make that available to other folks, and we can increase our own knowledge. Again, this is preparedness and partnerships between the city and its citizens. We're going to talk about our neighborhood program that we've just kind of rolled out, and there's a brochure on the back table about that. But there's a quote in there that the mayor said, and it's that preparedness is a partnership between the city and its citizens. And that's so true. It's so true. So without further ado, let's just jump right into a lot of the things that we can do and why we're getting prepared. We talk a lot about earthquakes because earthquakes is going to be the large-scale regional event that will have long-lasting impacts. But folks think about fire, flood, hazardous material spills, severe weather, power outages. This past winter, it felt like every other week we were having some sort of emergency going on. But I want folks to keep in mind, the steps you take for preparedness towards earthquake will benefit you for a lot of these other disasters listed. Power outages that we experienced in December, on the grand scale, that was probably, if the scale was 0 to 10 of disasters, that was probably a 3. Earthquake, when we talk about the big regional earthquake, we're talking about a 10. Well, we want to be prepared for everything. We want to be prepared for those 0 to 1. Now, a lot of folks think, I got to go out and, that means I got to buy this and I got to do that, and it's going to take a lot of time. Every step that you take makes you better off. And we're going to talk about a lot of simple things that take, 30 seconds to 5 minutes to do. And I strongly encourage folks to take one action within the next 24 hours. Because if you take an action in the next 24 hours, you're going to be more likely to continue with the steps towards preparedness. And preparedness is a process. It's always evolving. It's always changing. It needs to be updated. We need to review some of our plans, things like that. But if you take an action within the next 24 hours, you'll be more likely to continue with it. And that's really important. Okay, so what do these types of disasters have in common? Well, we know that city, county, government resources are all going to be overwhelmed. With that power outage that happened, a Red Cross is often considered one of the, the big nonprofit that responds to a lot of emergencies. During the power outage, they had 5 shelters open for an extended period of time, over 2 weeks. They exhausted all of their resources. So, think about that. I just kept thinking during the power outage, oh God, I hope we don't have an earthquake. Was my big thought. I'm like, of course, as soon as the power goes out, the temperature drops. Please don't let us add an earthquake on top of that. So, we know that government, nonprofit resources are going to be overwhelmed. Everyone will need information. Information is the key. Because if you have an idea of what's happening, how long you'll be affected, it's a lot easier to handle. And again, part of the reason why we prepare and make plans is so that we can be flexible. Because if we at least have okay, I know what to do. Okay, this might take a little longer. You have these ideas in place, well then it'll be easier to begin the recovery. And that's most important. Having, your own supplies to get by for at least 3 days. Now we know with certain disasters, 3 days is not enough. You look at Katrina, and they're still recovering. It took, California 9 years to recover after the World Series earthquake. So, some services will be restored quicker, but it can take a lot of time. But if you're not prepared at all, we'd rather get you prepared for at least 3. Because 3 is better than none. So, if you want to get prepared for a week, great. I strongly encourage you to do that. But at least 3 days. And again, if that's too much, starting off with a day, working up to 2, then to 3. It's again a process. You can build on it. And I guarantee once you get started, it's kind of contagious and you want to keep going. You'll want to be able to get in touch with the people that you care about. Again, if you know that your family members are okay, you can do a lot. I had one client during Katrina who was told to evacuate, and he got on the bus, and his kids got on the bus behind him because everybody was just loading buses. It was kind of, chaotic. And he loaded the bus. Well, they hit the highway. His bus went this way. Theirs went that way. So he went up to the driver and said, where's that bus going? Thanks to September 11th, the bus driver had to respond with, due to security reasons, we are not able to tell you where that bus is headed. Well, here's a guy who has no idea where he's headed. Doesn't know where his kids are headed. He had one kid that was 19 and one that was 11 on that bus. By the time he actually came to the Red Cross, I noticed, he was sitting in the back, he was quiet, and so I just, introduced myself, and even, I was like, do you want some water? Just, something that I can get. What's going on? Just starting that conversation, and he could barely continue a conversation. Well, and then he told me the story. 2 tracks where he'd been staying in a homeless shelter downtown for the past couple of weeks, because again, he couldn't function. Not only had he lost his home, been evacuated from the place that he grew up, but he didn't know where his kids were. We called the credit card company because he ended up giving him his wallet. Just in case we stop for a snack and I don't get off the bus, you can get something. Called the credit card company. And we found out that 3 times a day his credit card was getting charged in Missouri at McDonald's. So he knew they were eating. So we were able to, call Red Cross there and make some connections, and we found them. And that was a good story. But, a few weeks not knowing where your kids are, that can be prevented. Or at least mitigated. Again, preparedness isn't prevention. It's just kind of what are the things we can put in place so that our recovery can be a little better. Or our resources will be a little bit more available. We just want to have those things in place. If you have to evacuate your home or your neighborhood or your workplace, that's going to be a big consideration as well. These are the kind of common things that folks need to worry about. Now, you see evacuation more so with hurricanes and things like that, typically with an earthquake. And this is typical. Again, we can't predict disasters. But often you'll be told to shelter in place. If you are told to evacuate, you still want to have that plan in place. So you still want to have that discussion. Okay, so safety during an earthquake, because this changes. A lot of times, kids are learning in school, they bring the information home about fires. You want to have 2 escape routes from every room. You want to practice those things. You want to have a meeting place, and we encourage those things as well. But earthquake safety is one of those things that has been changing, because we learn. With every disaster, we learn things. And thank God for Californians, and if anyone here is from California, we thank you, because originally, they said, oh, go to a doorway during an earthquake. Well, and then that changed because, Kobe, Japan, they had a big earthquake a few years ago, and some of the common injuries that were being shown at the hospital were folks with broken fingers, toes, and collarbones. I did that backwards. Collarbones, toes. From standing in the doorway. The other thing is buildings that were built in the 20s and 30s, doorways were part of the frame. They were part of the frame construction of the house. Now, for economic reasons, it's more of a cutout. So it's less sturdy. So that changed, and that only changed about 18 years ago. So then they told folks to drop in cover. Okay, and it was drop cover under a table. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I don't have any tables at my house. At all. Not only is drop cover and hold an option. So you need alternatives to that. And they had to add hold, because thank you again, Californians, they dropped and they covered, but they were like, that's great, but the table bounced away. So for your family members, tell them that if they do drop and cover, to hold on to something, because either the table goes with them or they go with the table, but either way their head is being protected. So for anybody that's in a wheelchair, lock, cover, and hold is your next best bet. I don't know how many folks have automatic locks on their wheelchairs, or if it's a manual that you have to lock yourself, but you want to make sure that the wheels are locked, because then you're mitigating the movement. If possible, cover your head and your neck. If you have even a book available, cover your head and neck so that if there is something falling down, that your head and your neck are protected. Now, keep in mind that a lot of people, when you look at the media and they depict earthquakes, they show buildings collapsing, earth's opening, swallowing people whole, and that's just not realistic. In fact, in the United States, we don't see a lot of building collapse. Where we see damage is from the way we decorate. Exterior buildings, the facades fall. The windows may break. Our picture frames may fall down. Our clocks may fall. Bookcases might tip over. the way we decorate can actually be more dangerous to us. And we'll get into talking about how you can, mitigate some of the hazards that might be in your house. But if you can remember lock, cover, and hold, and we're going to get into the creating a safe environment ahead of time, is going to be your best bet, especially if you have small kids. A lot of folks think, if you have small kids, they just instinctively want to protect their kids, which is good. We want that in our parents. But kids don't know the difference between a 6.7 and a trip to grandma's house. And that's okay. But if we can create that safe environment to make sure things aren't falling down, then that's a good practice. Because again, if you have small kids, you're their heroes. When they fall down on a daily basis, they look to you for how I should react. Was that funny? Am I hurt? Was that scary? How should I be reacting? They look to you for those things. So if you can create that safe environment and take a quick, safe action, you'll be able to take care of them afterwards. There was a fatality in Northridge of a woman who was running to get to her kids and a bookcase fell on her. If we can eliminate that, we want to. So again, creating that safe environment limits the amount of injuries that can happen to us as well as our family members. Again, we cannot predict when earthquakes happen. Hurricanes, folks get a little bit of advance warning. Even the power outage, the windstorms, we had a little bit of warning. And a lot of folks ran to the QFC in a safe way to pick up some extra supplies because they had advance warning. Well, here's the warning. We're going to have an earthquake. I don't know when it's going to happen. It can happen tomorrow. It can happen in 50 years. It could happen in 2 weeks. But we know that it's going to happen. So, start taking some actions today as if we got that immediate warning. But we know that even though we can't predict when they happen, we can predict some of the ways that we're affected. We know that our utilities, our water, our sewer, electricity are going to be affected. We know that our roadways and our bridges may not be operable. We know that our telephone systems might be down. And there's a few things with the telephone systems. I don't know how many folks have cordless phones at home, but I'm sure during the power outage you learned that cordless phones don't work when there's no power. They need that electricity. So if you do have all cordless phones in your house, keep an extra plug-in in your supply kit. We'll get into communication a little bit later on. And this I cannot stress enough. Emergency response agencies will be overwhelmed immediately following a disaster. We're assuming that fire, police, EMS, all our typical first responders, that they personally aren't affected, their equipment's not affected, none of their roadways are affected, and none of their family members are affected. Even if that was all true, which is unrealistic, if that was all true, they still wouldn't be able to get to everybody right away. And immediately after a major incident like an earthquake, there's some certain things that have to take place. Fire department is actually told that if somebody's standing there on fire waving at them, they are not to stop. Their first responsibility is to do a damage assessment of what's going on so they can report in. So, when you think about that, standing on fire, looking at the fire department, and they're not going to stop. Because their first responsibility is to do damage assessment. And then once they've done the damage assessment, they need to put out any fires at the schools. They need to put out fires at the hospitals. So there's almost this, list of things that have to happen, and they're still not able to get to everybody right away. So again, that's why I stress that, it's going to be the people, the individuals, the citizens that are going to be responding to these things that are going to have the biggest impact. During Northridge, how many folks remember when the Oakland Bridge collapsed? Well done. The first responder to that scene was a painter who had ladders on his truck and was able to start, hoisting people up. That was the first responder on the scene. So it's going to be folks like that. So we need to set up the dialogue, for ourselves, with our family members, with our employers, any volunteer sites. We need to set up that dialogue. Again, communication before, during, and after is the most critical and often the thing that doesn't happen the best. Whoops. Okay. So creating a personal support network. This is identifying people at work, at home, in your neighborhood who might be able to assist during a disaster. And this could be even, hey, I'm not home from, usually from this hour to this hour because I'm working at this time. If you smell gas, here's where my gas meter is. Be sure to turn that off. It could be, hey, you know what? If something happens in the middle of the night, I want somebody to come and check on me. Here's how you can do that. Having these conversations, having these relationships put in place ahead of time. Again, it's best if you can have it 3 deep at each location. But again, with preparedness, it needs to be fluid. If you can have 5 at one location, great. If you have 2 at another or 1, okay. But you want to start having those dialogues with folks. Explain how you might need help and the appropriate ways for them to help. A lot of times after disaster, we're all very altruistic people. We really want to help. People call in, they donate food, money, clothes, everything. But even, more individually that happens as well. But, you might be like, I don't need help right now. And they might be really trying to help you. And they might be hindering you. So you need to have that conversation of, there's nothing blocking my way. You don't need to touch me. I'm okay. Or, if the ramp falls down, I'm going to need access to get, out of the house. Here's how you can help me. These are the appropriate ways. Very important to have those ahead of time. And it's also really good to practice giving good, clear, simple directions. Because again, during a disaster and immediately after, our adrenaline is through the roof. We're thinking real quick. We're not even thinking straight. Folks need to have the kind of practice and have these things discussed ahead of time. This is why fire departments and police departments drill all the time. Because if they get a call at 3 in the morning and the fire department's asleep, they need to pop up and respond right away without even thinking. Same reason why we practice. And we'll get into the importance of practicing as well. But just keep in mind that it's also good to practice if somebody comes up and wants to help, how you can either say no very, very clear and succinctly, or if you do need help, how they can help you in the appropriate ways. But practicing that is important. Exchange any important information with the folks that might be in your personal support network. If you have a secondary condition that a disaster could trigger because your emotions are running high, they need to know that. They need to know, okay, I keep a list of all my medical information in my fanny pack. This is where it is. Pull that out if you start seeing, signs of sweating or that I'm having trouble speaking or something like that. Let them know. They need to know that ahead of time. And practice. Practice is the most important thing. I'll get into practice in just a second. Stocking supplies. Now again, this is something that is important, but don't feel overwhelmed by. Because every item that you keep on your person, in your supply kit, at work, benefits you. And only makes you stronger. These are kind of the list of the top ones that we recommend. But again, if you keep 3 of them, think of what are the most important ones for you. It's kind of like the Burger King slogan, preparedness your way. Make it work for you. Your plan needs to work for you. Your supply kit needs to work for you. And again, a lot of things folks do have around their home. Extra blankets, a deck of cards. Because believe me, you're going to want some sort of entertainment if you're trapped in your house with your family for 3 days. Maybe not. I do. Water. We can't live without water. We can't live without water. And it's recommended, you have a brochure that actually mentions all the disaster supplies that are recommended. Before you open it, it is daunting. It's a daunting list. Highlight your top 10. Start there. Highlight your most important. Start there. Those are going to be the things that we want folks to kind of have the attitude of, I'm so glad I did, instead of, I wish I would have. If we can get people that are in that state of, I'm so glad I did this, good. And again, it doesn't have to be everything that's listed on those things. It just needs to be the top priority stuff that you know that you will need. Radio and batteries. The reason, I want to go back to water for 1 second. They recommend 1 gallon of water per person per day. That's a lot of space. That's a lot of water, and it's kind of heavy. So, the breakdown for that is it's 1/2 gallon for drinking and 1/2 gallon for food, sanitation, cooking, anything like that. I don't have a lot of space in my apartment. I also don't mind being a little dirty. And I have nothing in my kit that needs to be cooked. So I only have a half a gallon of water. So I mean, think about your needs. Think about, what you can make do on, and start with that. Radio and batteries, cannot stress the importance of that. And nowadays, with every new disaster, there's tons of new products that pop up as well. Since 9/11, the emergency preparedness industry has just shot through the roof. And there's all sorts of nifty little gadgets out there now. I don't care if it's a crank radio. I don't care if it's a battery-operated radio. I don't care if it's a flashlight radio, car charger, pop-up tent. I don't care. As long as you have a radio as a part of that so that you can get information. In the Puget Sound area, and especially King County, so if folks reside outside of King County, you might want to check with your local Office of Emergency Management. But our designated radio station for emergency information is Cairo 710 AM. And that's where you're going to get all that information as far as if you're in this area, you need to shelter in place. If you're in this area, you need to evacuate. These are the roads that are available. These are the roads that are down. There are shelters in this location, this location, and this location. Or, something like the windstorm. I went home and I wanted to know how many city light crews were out. I wanted to make sure that at 11 o'clock there were still crews out there. And I liked knowing that information. And they would say, we're hoping to have light on in the north end in 3 days. Having that information is empowering. I can get by knowing that. So if you can get that key information, that good information that's being distributed, it'll make the recovery portion a lot easier. Prescription medication. Here was something in Katrina that we saw way too much of folks that didn't have medication. And one of the problems with medication is this. One day without medication. Okay, I'm uncomfortable, but my blood pressure's okay, my vitals are all right. I'm not top on the list. I'm not even on the radar scale of the medical community. Okay, day 2, I don't have my medication. Oh, my anxiety's up, but I'm still all right. I'm still not, top on their priority list because they'll be dealing with life safety issues. But day 3 comes around, and now I have a life safety issue at hand. So if I can have, medication for 3, and I would say even 7 to 10 days of medication. Now, and I know that insurance companies make that very challenging. It can be very expensive. I encourage folks work with doctors because a lot of times they have samples where they might be able to work with a pharmacy to let you know maybe when you need to renew or when, or how they can maybe give you a couple of extra that you can, stock in your kit. Again, that's going to be something that you need to update because medication has an expiration date, but you can still use it. If you're redoing your kit every 6 months, you can use the medication at that point so that it's not going to waste. And then, you might need a new set of samples. Critical medical information. Again, we kind of talked about that already. Who are the folks that need to know? Do they know how to access that information? Do they know where it's located? Is it all written down? Again, thinking about how disasters affect us. We're not going to be thinking really clearly. It's really great if we can have it written down. It's really great if we could just be like, okay, this, and this. Or I need to do this. You have that written down. It's a reference point. Great. Food. You notice food is lower on the list. We could actually go a little bit without food. Do we want to? Probably not. But we can. We can get by. So water is more important than the food. But when you store your food, make it stuff that you like. If you don't like tuna fish today, you're not going to like it during a disaster. You'll probably hate it more because now you're tired, you're cranky, you're in a disaster, now you have to eat something you don't like. Make sure there's things in there that you do like. Whether that's protein bars or granola bars. I happen to have Cocoa Puffs. I have my protein bars as well, but I don't eat Cocoa Puffs a lot. I don't allow myself to eat them very often, but I like them. And it's going to be a comfort food for me. So it's just something that I know about myself. So I make sure that I include that in my kit. Flashlights and glow sticks. You notice that there's no candle up there. Candles are becoming the #1 fire starter in the country. I don't even let my roommate have candles in the house. You can probably tell I'm a lot of fun to live with. But candles are becoming the #1 fire starter. So if we can eliminate that as a potential for a secondary disaster, we need to. Because, a lot of times if there's a window broken, the animals are freaked out, the cat walks by, knocks over the candle, hits the curtain, now you have a secondary disaster, and the fire department can't respond. So let's eliminate that as an option. So if we can have flashlights, extra batteries, or glow sticks, and I brought some glow sticks as well, but I'm kind of leashed in right now. Has everybody seen the glow sticks?
The box.
The box, is it over there? And temporary pause, elevator music, la la la. Okay. These are pretty great because, and I can't open it. But, here we go. You snap them, you shake them, and they get bright green. Or orange or yellow, they have a variety of colors. But you can see how bright this is even with the lights on. When the lights are off,
Wait.
oh, this is exciting. It's as we go. But you can see that they get brighter. And they last for about 12 hours. And they're great because you can snap them and leave them. I, being an adult, am willing to share this. I hate the dark. I hate it. I kind of panic and freak out in the dark. So during a power outage or a disaster, I need to snap these, shake them, and I need to have one in the bathroom, I need to have one in my bedroom, and I need to have one in my kitchen. These are things that I know about myself. And I can relax a little bit, and I'm comforted because I know that I have these in place. Now, these can vary between, $1.25 and $2.50 at any type of hardware store. If you can hold off, if you already have a couple of flashlights in the house, and you kind of feel good about that, and you can hold off till after Halloween, great. Because after Halloween, you can go into any type of store. They have these all over the place, and right after Halloween, they go down to like 75 cents a piece. So a really great thing to have. And again, they last about 3.5 years without being opened. So, and again, 12 hours is a good long time, especially when we have something that happens in the winter months. When it's dark for 20 hours a day, it's good to have a light source that's always available. Okay. Eyeglasses, especially for folks who wear contact lenses. After a disaster, especially earthquake, fire, there's debris floating around. If that's getting into your contacts are going to get irritated. So it might be a good idea to have a backup pair of glasses available. Sturdy shoes or gloves. Because again, one of the major things that happens during earthquakes and fire is windows break. So, if somebody has to, get out of the house either by wheelchair or by walking, we don't want anybody getting cut feet or legs, and we don't want folks getting their hands cut because they're getting, glass and debris in their wheels. So, keep an extra pair of those. And I recommend keeping the shoes or the gloves and a flashlight or a glow stick underneath your bed. This way you can tuck them underneath your bed if something happens in the middle of the night, they're available to you. So that, if you can snap a light, you can kind of see a little bit. Or, if you need to get out quickly, you can make sure that you're not getting your hands and your feet cut. Because again, cut hands and cut feet aren't going to be top on the medical list. It's still going to be hurtful. It's still not going to feel good. You're still not going to like it. So let's see if we can make that not happen. And if you have those things under your bed, that's a possibility. A whistle, this is something that they've added probably in the past 5 years. Fire departments are really recommending this, and these are great for fires in particular. Because, if somebody gets trapped in an area, especially a fire, how much do you think you could yell? You're probably going to run out of wind doing that before the fire department even comes. So if you're trapped in an area and you need to signal for help, but fires, I don't know how many folks have ever been to a fire. They are loud, they are dark, and they have a lot going on. You're not going to be able to hear, you're not going to hear that. But a whistle is something that is loud, it's piercing, and it's distinct. So that they can say, oh, there's somebody in the top left corner that's needing assistance. As opposed to, okay, we have to sweep every area to find a person. So it reduces the rescue time. So that's something that's really great too. And if you have, again, small kids, as much as it might drive you crazy to give them a whistle, having that in their nightstand might be a good idea as well. Having a smaller kit at work, I don't have a car, but a car is a good idea as well. If you have a vehicle, it might be something where you're like, well, I take my vehicle to work, I take my vehicle home, I take it to my volunteer opportunity. Okay, I'm going to keep some supplies there. I don't, so I have a backpack that always has a little pouch of water, it always has a glow stick, it has a whistle, it has a flashlight. But again, preparedness person, so not everybody has to be like me. But having smaller kits available, because you want these things at your fingertips. Another thing I will say about supplies, and again, making it your own, know yourself and honor that. Include those things in your kit. I know for a fact that I don't like it when my hair falls in my face. And I also know that part of my responsibility being a city employee is that if something happens, I have to report to work. No matter what, even if all the bridges are down, I still have to fight tooth and nail to try to get into work. If my hair's falling in my face, that's going to aggravate me. So I make sure that I have hair ties in my kit. I also learned in September 11th that when there is debris and particles floating in the air, I have asthma. I don't seem to have it any other time, but when there's stuff floating around and getting into my lungs don't like that. So I make sure that I keep an inhaler in my kit. Just knowing that, disaster affects me a little bit differently, and I need to plan for that.
Can I ask a quick question about water?
Of course.
What's the rule of thumb with iodine tablets? Like, if you don't have a lot of room to store a lot of water, can you just keep iodine tablets to...
It's recommended to have the bleach if you're going to add a chemical to the water, but if you're using, say, tap water in your kit, replace that every 6 months and you'll be okay. The bottled water, if you replaced it yearly, and again, at that 6 months, at that year point, you can still drink it. It doesn't have to, just be money down the toilet. But if if you're like, well, I just haven't updated my kit in 5 years and it's been sitting in my trunk, that might be scary water. But if you were going to add something to it, I would add a little bit of bleach. And, folks are always like, well, how much bleach do you add? I would add a little bit, shake it, let it sit for half an hour. And here's the gross thing, though, with the bleach, is when you open it up, if it doesn't smell a little bit like bleach, you need to add more. Because you need to make sure that whatever kind of bacteria that might be growing in there is dead before you're drinking it. So what skills might you and your family members need to take care of yourself and them? Fire evacuation planning. Again, your personal support network at home and work needs to be involved with this. This is something that, it's important that everybody figure out 2 ways out of, each room, which is a lot. If anybody lives in an apartment like I do, I don't have a lot of ways out of my apartment. So there needs to be maybe creative thinking. And if you can't come up with 2, at least practice that one. Become very comfortable with that one. Know that one. And then if you are unable to evacuate in some way, plan the mitigation steps. At night, when you go to sleep, make sure the door's closed. If you know that you might not be able to evacuate, if there's a fire in the middle of the night, do you have, a towel that stays underneath the bed that you can tuck by the doorway to prevent smoke from coming in? Do you have the whistle there to signal to let folks that know that you might need help? So if you can't figure out an additional way to get out of each room, start thinking about the different ways that you can prevent the smoke and the fire from getting to you before help arrives. First aid. This is something that I cannot stress enough, because even if you can't get to somebody, but you see that they need help, you can yell out clear, good directions and say, control that bleeding, put pressure on that leg, put a blanket on top, keep them warm. You can still give those directions, and the information is still really, really useful. And at Red Cross, I taught first aid all the time, and we were always told that 80% of the time, if you ever use first aid or CPR, it'll be on somebody in your household. That being said, I made my roommate go through first aid training because I felt like it was great that I knew how to do these things. But if I got hit in the head by something and knocked out, I wanted her to be able to take care of me. Now again, I'm not the most fun person to live with, but we're both very prepared. You want to learn how and when to control your utilities. Do you have a water heater? Is it properly strapped down? Do you use gas or electric? I think everybody uses electricity. You may not. But do you know how to turn it off? Do you know the safe ways for turning it off? We have some of those resources available on our website, which I'll give. But the simple version is if you have gas, this is your gas line, and this is the little knob. If it's facing this way, gas is flowing. If you take a crescent wrench and turn it, well, now you've blocked the gas from going up. And again, if you're like, well, the gas meter's a little low, that's not really an option for me, still know how to do it so you can give good, clear directions and tell somebody how to. Because if you see the dials are moving all over the place, if you can smell gas, if you can hear hissing, you want that gas to get turned off because it's a fire hazard. 60% of all of the earthquakes that happened in Northridge right after the earthquake that they had was because water heaters weren't properly strapped down, they popped off, and the gas line started to fire. So on that note, the proper way to strap down your water heater is to have earthquake straps, not plumber's tape. Plumber's tape's not sturdy enough, but earthquake straps about a third from the top and a third from the bottom. You want to have two. They used to recommend the one, but we learned that that's not good enough. So that's the proper way to do that. For electricity, if you kind of see some sparks coming out of an outlet, probably a good time to turn off the electricity, and that would be little breaker, little breaker, little breaker, main. So that's kind of how that would work. A lot of folks turn off the main right away, because again, you're like, disaster. Well, you create a surge, and that goes back to the main breaker, which again, surges can create fires. So you want to make sure that you know the safe ways to do that. Oops. Reduce earthquake hazards. Again, this is one of the best things that we can do ahead of time. And this is kind of like when you're planning your escape routes, I like to call this conducting your home hazard hunt. Go into each room of your house and take a peek. Okay, in my bedroom, I close the door. Wow, there's a really lovely piece of artwork above my head. Well, if it falls down and hits me in the head, am I still going to like it? No, maybe it's time to move it. They do have securing devices that, they sell at like Home Depot, Lowe's, any type of home improvement store that could secure it to the wall. But if that's not a resource, maybe it's time to move it to the opposite side. At least something that it's not going to fall. The general rule of thumb here is if it would break and fall and hurt somebody, bolt, anchor, or strap it down. If it would break and fall and block an exit, bolt, anchor, strap it down, or move it to another part of the room. Especially if anybody's not a homeowner. I rent, and I want to keep my security deposit. Bolting things to the wall is not an option. So I need to rearrange. I need to be a little bit more creative. If that falls down, will I still be able to get out? If not, it needs to move. And so there are a couple of things I like to think about when doing this. If you ever child-proofed your home to make sure that, the kids can't get into the cabinets and, they're not going to, trip on this or that. It's kind of the same thing. You don't want them to get into that chemical cabinet. So they have, child safety locks. Because during a disaster, if that chemical cabinet opens up, and now you've had 3 chemicals that were fine on their own, but now they've mixed, you've now created a hazardous material spill. So if we can prevent that, again, good. And we just want to make sure that we're creating that safe environment. That's what I'm saying. Okay, the next portion we're going to talk about is the communication. Again, knowing where our families and friends makes us able to do a lot more. We can handle a lot of situations when we know folks are okay and that they're safe. Unfortunately, when we're talking disaster preparedness, those simple things that we don't think about are often the most important. Am I okay? Is my loved one okay? Do I have something to drink? Am I cold? Is it dark? Those things become very, very important. So for communication, we recommend, and you'll see everybody has a bright yellow card. That's the out-of-area phone contact. The most reliable telephone line after a disaster is going to be long distance. It's just how it is. One of the other things is, after an earthquake, what do you think happens to phone receivers during an earthquake? Shake, they fall down. So when all of the phone receivers are falling off the hook, the system crashes. On a daily basis, the phone system is only equipped to handle about 10% of the population. During the Columbine shooting in Denver, the metropolitan area, their phone system crashed. Not because the shooting affected it, because immediately afterwards, everybody picked up their phone and called everybody. And the phone system crashed. So long distance is going to be your best source as far as communication. And you want to establish somebody that's out of the area who's going to serve as a relay point. Now this could be, Joe in Missouri, who everybody in the household knows. He's the favorite uncle. Everybody really likes him. And everybody's going to call Uncle Joe. Now, every person in the household needs to know that Uncle Joe is the out-of-area contact, and they need to know his number. During this quali, a lot of kids went up to their teachers and were like, I have to call my uncle. I have to call my aunt. Okay, sweetie, what's her number? I don't know. It's really important that everybody has that phone number. The other thing that's important about that is you can leave critical information. I'm okay. I'm at work. I have to stay here for a while. And leave that message with them. So now, your other household members might be calling them, but you're not blocking those local lines. Probably all not going to have the same out-of-area contact, so we probably won't make that system crash. But we want to stay off those local lines because it is essential that if there are any local lines working, or as soon as they are available, the folks that are having life-threatening emergencies need to be able to access 911. And I know that seems kind of like a silly statement, but can anybody guess what the number one phone call was to 911 after Nisqually? Was there an earthquake? Did an earthquake just happen? They know. Don't call them. And if you need reassurance, knock on your neighbor's door. Call out to the person upstairs. Turn on the TV, turn on the radio. Get your emergency information. Find out what's happening. We had one fatality in this quali, and it was a man trying to call 911 to report that his wife was having a heart attack and he wasn't able to get through. That is preventable death. And that's something that we want to make sure that we empower folks to do. So if you can't call if you're not calling 911, if you can't call locally, what are your options? Long distance is the best. The most reliable long distance line is going to be payphones. Now, good luck finding a payphone. But I, went through my neighborhood and I found where two were within a 5-block radius. And I work in the university district. I live in the university district, so I think there are a little bit more payphones there. But I mapped out where those are. Have backups to that. Know an email address. After Nisqually, even when the phones crashed, email and the internet were up and running. Have depths to the plan. Make sure that it's not just, well, if this doesn't work, oh well, I have, for communication, you can have multiple resources. You can try the out-of-area contact on the long-distance line, which again is reliable. You might be emailing that person to let them know. Text messaging on telephones is becoming a really popular thing because you can text, hit send, and even if it doesn't go through right away, it keeps trying to resend it. And then it'll let you know when it's sent. But then it's something you don't have to worry about. Now, when you do determine who this out-of-area contact is going to be, let them know. Let them know that they have the responsibility that if something happens in this area, their job is to go home and wait by that phone, or their computer, or both, preferably, and wait by that phone for information. My entire family is all still in New York, but they all know that if something happens here, I'm calling my grandmother. She's not working right now. She's at home. So she's my best option for calling. And they can call her as much as they want. But they're calling her and they're not calling me. So they're keeping those lines busy, but they're not blocking the local lines here. Reunion plans. Now, if you are at work and you can't get home because your area has been, all the roadways are blocked out, do you have a backup place to stay? Do you have a friend that lives on the mainland or lives where there's not a bridge to get to? Is there some way that you can stay with somebody and they know that so that you're not trying to contact them during something happening? For fire we talk about, when you evacuate your meeting place outside. Well, we're talking about a secondary meeting place now because if you're at work and your kids are at school, and they're probably going to be staying at school, and your partner is at their job, and you can't return home, where's the other place that you can meet up? Is it a friend's? Is it, a family member? Is it somebody else that you can stay with? And someplace that you both know you'll meet up. Ask questions about the disaster plans at your schools, daycares, and and if you have parents in retirement communities. They are all required to have disaster plans. But I can tell you that the schools, the daycares, the retirement centers that have the best disaster plans are the ones where the parents or the children are actively involved. That's true with everything. So if you ask those questions, bring it up. Because a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, we have a plan. And it was a plan that was built in 1989. Even at one of my old jobs, I asked what, was the disaster plan. And part of it said, call Bill Moran. And I apologize if Bill Moran ever views this, but Bill Moran didn't work there anymore. I didn't even know what his position title was. So the whole disaster plan relied on somebody who didn't even work there anymore. They need to be updated. You need to make sure that if someone says, yes, we have a plan, oh good, when was the last time it was reviewed? Just, because it has to be an ongoing process, because things change. And we learn stuff. And as we learn stuff, we need to improve on that. Make sure that everybody in your personal support network knows and understands your plan, and if, schools or daycares affect that plan. Because if you know, well, my kids are at school, but my school has a great disaster plan, you're still going to want to reunite with your kids. You're not going to be like, they're fine. But you'll feel more confident that they're okay until you can access them. So keep those things in mind. I mentioned practice earlier a couple of times. I can't stress it enough. And practice can be a variety of things. It can be physically practicing something. It can be having the dialogue with something. If this happens, this is what you and I are going to do. If I blow my whistle, this is your response to me. And we have this conversation. That's one way of doing it. But every time you practice your plan, you double your chances of actually doing the right thing during an emergency. And if you don't, there's only a 10% chance of actually doing it. And that's just not good enough. 10% is not a high enough rate. We need folks to be having these conversations. We need folks to be having the dialogues. Now, my goal is that disaster preparedness will kind of be, just ingrained in our culture. Just something that we do. It's just incorporated. Kind of like where the seatbelt was about 30 years ago. When they made a law that everybody had to wear a seatbelt, the folks were like, oh, I have to wear a seatbelt, it's going to wrinkle my clothes, it's going to get in my way, it's going to choke me, it's going to be uncomfortable. And now, most people get in their cars and they don't even think about it and they put a belt on. So, we want preparedness to kind of be the same thing. And practicing and reviewing and update helps facilitate that. One of the things that I do is daylight savings time. If I have to adjust my clocks anyway, I might as well look at my kid. I might as well test my smoke alarms. I kind of make those my preparedness days. Where it's an opportunity where I have to do additional tasks anyway, I might as well update my plan, or at least review it. Getting organized, and this is kind of where we talk about, working with our neighbors, working with our office environments. We have a new program that's called SNAP, and I don't know, how many folks were familiar with START? START, okay. Were you both members of START? Yeah. Okay. SNAP is just the next generation. If you were already a part of START, these are folks that are resources because they have a wealth of information and they've had a wealth of training in a lot of this stuff. SNAP's just the next generation. One of the lessons that we learned with Katrina was that, you can't rely on the government, often immediately after a disaster. So during your preparedness phase, we want to get folks to start working independently. We want to be a resource. We want to be helpful to brainstorm and give good ideas and give, materials to. But we don't want your preparedness relying on our availability, because that's just not realistic. But the goals, the fundamentals, the ideals are exactly the same. What are where are our meeting places? Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to handle what tasks? Are there going to be people controlling utilities and doing damage assessment? Are we going to have a shelter available? But with the new program, it's just a little bit more flexible as far as, there might be different needs in a community. If you have a community with a lot of kids, there might need to be a daycare set up. Who's really good with kids? Who's going to be the person that can watch all the kids, especially if their parents are assigned to one of these tasks? We need their parents to do that. The other major difference is that with START, you needed to have 25 to 50 homes within your block radius. With SNAP, if you have 5 people on a 5-block radius who want to get prepared, if you have 5 people in your office who want to get prepared, or 2, or 3, or 50, there's no magic number. Anybody that wants to team up and partner, we want to encourage to do that. And we want to provide skills and information so that they feel confident that they can do that. But typically, these are the 2 major areas, the response tasks and the people tasks. The controlling utilities, simple search and rescue, damage assessment, first aid, shelter, and communications. And communications has shifted a little bit too, because again, it used to be in the plan that if you were communicating, to go to your community center and report to a ham radio, and they would report in what was going on. Well, with Katrina, they learned that 1, there were not enough ham radio operators to go around, and 2, some of the community centers weren't up. So that's another reason for stressing the importance of that battery-operated radio, so that you can at least get information and track your notes, so that when first responders or additional first responders show up, you can provide them with a list of the information that's been going on in the area. Okay. Benefits of getting organized. I'm sure, some of this stuff is pretty common sense. What's the benefit of getting organized and prepared? But you, your family, your coworkers become better prepared. You get to know each other. I don't know how many folks live in a neighborhood where you don't actually know your neighbors. But no longer do people move into neighborhoods and people bring over a meatloaf or cookies or say hello. We just don't do that. We're more of a transient community. But we need to get to know one another. We can save time and money by working together. And you can increase the efficiency of the response immediately following the disaster. Because if I'm better prepared, my roommate is better prepared because I am ridiculously prepared. Which means that the people in my building are a little bit better prepared. Well, if some of them got prepared, our block would be better prepared. And it's kind of that ripple effect. And, immediately after a disaster, the critical infrastructure as far as city services, county services being provided, need to get up and running. So if there's a few less phone calls, if there's, less of a concern about this because half the neighborhoods have put out some of the fire risks, then those services go up and running a lot quicker. And we can make our recovery quicker and smoother by working together. Peace of mind, knowing that you're able to take care of yourself and your family members, is a big deal, and it's really important to feel confident in that. To feel like you can handle what happens. Again, the preparedness is so that we can be flexible with some of the things, because we don't always know what the secondary disasters are going to be. In Southeast Asia, they survived the earthquake. No one knew what kind of a tsunami was coming. In the Gulf Coast, I was so relieved watching the news after Katrina went through. I was like, oh, thank God it's over. And it wasn't that bad. And then the levees broke. Secondary disaster that made it devastating. A lot of times it's that stuff that we can't even imagine happening. But if we have plans, if we have some supplies, if we have some relationships set up ahead of time, it makes those things a little bit easier to get through. And really, they're not called disasters, for no reason. They're disasters because they're bad. But if we can make our response, our recovery, a little bit better, and we can take some of those actions now, gosh, we're just going to be so much stronger for it. And it really can be fun. I know a lot of folks are like, oh, emergency preparedness. Ugh. A couple of things that we recommend is, if you're having a dinner party at your house, practice an earthquake drill. See what everybody would do, if they knew what to do. You might want to give them a heads up that that's happening, just because otherwise people will be like, I'm never coming to a party here again. But, you know, it's an opportunity. If you're doing that with your family members at a holiday. For my cousins, I used to live with them for a while, and I went home, and my aunt was just kind of like, they're driving me crazy. And so I was like, we're going to have a fire escape drill, and I'm going to blindfold them. So at first, you know, they're thinking, wow, older, you know, cousin Tracy's going to come home and blindfold us. How cool is that? So I blindfolded them, and I made them practicing getting out of bed and trying to find the doorways and finding the windows and testing the doors. And at least 6 times we heard, oh, ow. And I was like, right, and that's why your mom doesn't want you leaving that there. So it was great for the adults anyway, because my aunt and uncle really enjoyed the fact that they were, you know, also like, oh, good, okay, now they're learning that they also need to clean up after themselves. So it wasn't as amusing for the kids, but it was more amusing for the adults. But there are ways that you can make these things fun. And they really do make a difference. You know, in schools, they practice drop, cover, and hold, and earthquake drills and earthquake safety. They practice fire escape. They practice their meeting places. And that's why, you know, oh, we had a fire alarm in 5th period and blah, 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 blah. And there's this container they keep in the back that they never let us have, but it has gummy worms and blankets and all this other stuff. They're going to have tons of information because they practice. It's so second nature. For more information, well, that's not our website, but this is our email address if you have questions. Our website is www.seattle.gov/emergency. This is also our phone number, so you can call us at any time. Any materials that you like, or you're like, hey, I want to share this with my neighbors, let us know. We'll be happy to send that to you as well. But also, as you're going through your plans, you know, or you're creating your plans, or you're coming up with something and saying, well, you know, my situation's a little bit different, and this isn't going to work for me, and I see this is on your list, and, you know, I need to have a better solution. Well, call us. Let's work through that together. You know, let that be a brainstorming session for us to figure out what's going to work for you. I don't know everybody's abilities, or, you know, if somebody has an income barrier or something like that. I don't know those things. I can give tools, I can give ideas, but together we can brainstorm solutions. Hopefully we can come up with solutions for those things. One thing I did want to mention that I forgot to is, if folks want to become SNAP groups, whether that be in their workplace or in their neighborhood, if they know 5 people that want to get together, signing up is really easy. I don't know why that was so difficult. If you were a START team, there's one form you need to fill out, just giving your block coordinator and a point of contact. And here's one of the great things about becoming a SNAP group, is we've teamed up with the Department of Neighborhoods, and they're putting together a special grant opportunity for SNAP groups. So you could say, you know, this is our SNAP group. You know, we've noticed that, you know, in our area, we're really concerned about XYZ, so it's really important that we have hard hats, or we have first aid supplies, or that 5 people get trained in how to turn off your utilities properly. What you do is, if you go to the class, they'll pay for the class, you're paying with your time, and then they'll provide you with funding so that you can get supplies, so that you can get things that you might need in the neighborhood to help you recover. And that might be fire extinguishers. It could be, you know, search and rescue equipment. It could be flashlights. It could be a variety of things. And you know, we have some ideas available, but please be creative with that, because it's a kind of a first-time opportunity that the 2 departments have teamed up together. And it's really, I think, the first opportunity where we can give money to people who want to get prepared, which I think is great. But the caveat being that you need to be registered as a SNAP group. We also created a disaster preparedness video that kind of talks about, you know, ways to be safe during certain hazards, putting your plans together, having communication available. It's about 16 minutes long. If you're creating a SNAP group and you want to have the video available, great, we'll be happy to send that to you. I'm also going to leave one here so that it can be available in the library, so if folks want to take a peek at that, that's an additional option. Another thing and I'm sure the START members will remember this real easy, Here's a simple communication tool. This is a help and an okay sign. Now again, when you think about the response after a real major disaster, it's going to be, those households that are surrounding you. If you're okay, you could put this in the windowsill. And probably letting folks know you're okay might be less important as opposed to if you need assistance. And you can put this in the window. Now granted, you still need to get to the window and put this in the window, but if it's a last resort, if it's something that you need to let your neighbors know that you need help, this is an option. Again, we're talking about real chaotic situations where our normal resources aren't available to us. These are our MacGyver moments. This is the opportunity when people have creative coping, that you come up with solutions that will work for you with what you have available. So this is something, and I brought a lot of these as well if folks want to take those. The important thing to know, too, is if you do take a bunch for folks maybe in your neighborhood, let them know what it is. It's a good opportunity to get to know folks, but also to say, hey, look, this is just something that in case of a disaster, that we can all stick these in our windows. You as well. We want to know how you're doing too. I mean, we all need to check on each other. So, having your help okay sign available.
All right. We are already a little bit over time, so I want to wrap it up. We've been handing out evaluation forms. Please fill them out. If you need to rush off, we have self-addressed prepaid envelopes, so you can just take one of the envelopes and if you need to leave. Also, if you wouldn't mind just hanging out a few minutes, if you have any other small questions that you can come up individually, that'd be great. But thank you very much.
And our number's on the back of that PowerPoint as well.
Right.
So.
Thank you.